Hello, everyone, and welcome to Midnight Whispers. I know many of you listen to these stories to relax and slowly fall asleep. Before we begin, feel free to leave a comment and tell me where you're listening from tonight. If you enjoy these stories, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now, get comfortable, take a slow breath, and let's begin. This only happened earlier this year, which somehow makes it harder to process, because it still feels raw and unfinished. It isn't one of those distant stories from the past that time has softened around the edges. It's recent. It's close. It involves people I know, places I recognize, and routines that haven't changed, even though something terrible happened right in the middle of them. At work, we noticed that one of our colleagues had been off for a long time. At first, no one thought too much of it. People take time off for all kinds of reasons: illness, family issues, stress, personal stuff that isn't anyone else's business. But as the weeks passed, it became obvious that this wasn't normal for him. He wasn't someone who took long periods off work. He was reliable, consistent, the kind of person who always showed up. His absence felt noticeable in a quiet way, like a chair left empty for too long. When he eventually came back, there was a heaviness about him that hadn't been there before. He was physically present, but something had changed. He was quieter, more withdrawn. Conversations didn't flow the same way. There was a tension around him, a sadness that sat just beneath the surface. At first, people didn't ask questions. No one wanted to pry or make things worse. But over time, bits of the story came out. We found out that while he had been off work, one of his close friends had been murdered. Not an accident, not an illness. Murdered. The details were difficult to hear, even secondhand. His friend had been out with a group of people, doing something completely ordinary. They were at a pub watching a football match. The team they supported had won, and they were celebrating. Drinking, laughing, enjoying the moment like countless groups do every single week across the country. There was nothing unusual about it, nothing dangerous on the surface, just people watching football. But in the same pub, there was another group, supporters of the opposing team. When the match ended and the celebrations started, tensions rose. Words were exchanged. It started as an argument, the kind that happens far too often around football. Shouting, insults, posturing. That aggressive, tribal energy that seems to come out of people when it comes to teams, colors, and chants. Eventually, my colleague and his friends left the pub. They didn't stay to escalate things. They didn't go looking for trouble. They left, probably thinking that was the end of it. That the worst of it had been some shouting and bad vibes. That once they were outside and on their way, things would settle down. They were wrong. The group of men who had been arguing with them followed. They jumped his friend. Not a fair fight. Not a moment of heated chaos that got out of hand. A group attack. They beat him so badly that he was left critically injured. He was taken to hospital, where he fought for his life. But eventually he died from his injuries. Someone lost their life because of football, a game, a match on a screen. A group of grown men decided that another human being deserved to die because of which team he supported. When you hear something like that, it's hard to know how to react. There's shock, of course, disbelief, anger. But there's also a sickening familiarity to it, especially here in England. Because this isn't the first time something like this has happened. And deep down, everyone knows it won't be the last. Football culture here can feel suffocating at times. On match days, entire areas become hostile. Riot vans line the streets. Hundreds of police are stationed at train stations and around stadiums. Horses, barriers, high-visibility jackets everywhere. You can feel the tension in the air before anything even happens. It's treated like a war zone because history has proven over and over again that it can turn into one. And the thing that makes it worse is that all of this is normalized. We accept that on certain days violence is expected. We accept that police resources will be drained. We accept that people will get hurt. We accept that families will worry about their loved ones getting home safely. No, all because of football. After hearing what happened to my colleague's friend, that acceptance feels unbearable. It's not just about disliking the sport. It's about what it brings out in some people. The way it becomes an excuse for hatred, aggression, and cruelty. The way it gives sad, angry men permission to unleash violence and then hide behind loyalty to a team as if that somehow justifies it. These aren't passionate fans. These are people looking for an outlet. People who want a reason to fight, to dominate, to hurt someone. And football gives them a socially accepted framework to do it. Scarves, shirts, chants, rivalries. It all becomes fuel. What makes it even more disturbing is how preventable it all is. No one had to die that night. No one needed to be attacked. A disagreement over a match could have ended with people going their separate ways, maybe muttering insults under their breath, maybe feeling annoyed for a while. Instead, it escalated into murder. My colleague didn't just lose a friend. He lost a sense of safety. A sense that ordinary things are harmless. Going to the pub, watching a match, celebrating a win. Those things will never feel the same for him again. Grief like that doesn't stay contained. It spills into every part of your life. At work, we could see it in small ways. The way he stared off into space sometimes. The way his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. The way certain conversations would make him go quiet. It was clear that he was carrying something heavy, something that couldn't be left at the door when he came in. And what do you even say to someone in that situation? There are no words that make it better. Sorry for your loss. Feels empty when the loss was so violent and senseless. When someone was taken not by fate or illness, but by other people's rage. It also forces you to confront uncomfortable truths about the world you live in. About how fragile life is. About how quickly things can turn. About how some people value their ego, their team, their pride more than another person's existence. This is one of the main reasons I hate football, especially here. Not because of the game itself, but because of everything that surrounds it. The aggression, the entitlement, the idea that violence is just part of the culture, the shrugging acceptance that this is just how it is. It shouldn't be how it is. No one should die because of football. No one should have their family torn apart, their friends traumatized, their future erased because a group of men couldn't control themselves over a sport. Yet it keeps happening, again and again. Different names, different cities, same story. What makes it even harder to stomach is how quickly these stories fade from public attention. There's outrage for a short while. News articles, statements, maybe a few arrests. And then the cycle moves on. Another match, another rivalry, another weekend. But for the people left behind, it doesn't move on. For my colleague, that loss will be with him forever. Every birthday his friend won't celebrate. Every memory that now ends abruptly. Every moment where he remembers that his friend didn't just die, he was beaten to death in the street for something that never should have mattered. There's also a deep unfairness in how these things are framed. Sometimes it's brushed off as hooliganism, as if that word softens the reality, as if it's just rowdy behavior that went too far. But there is nothing trivial about a group of people killing someone. That's not mischief. That's violence. That's murder. And it leaves scars far beyond the immediate victims. It makes people afraid. afraid to go out, afraid to wear certain colors, afraid to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, afraid to enjoy something harmless because someone else might decide it's worth killing over. It also creates anger, a deep, simmering anger at the systems that allow this to keep happening, at the culture that excuses it, at the idea that resources are constantly poured into controlling football-related violence instead of addressing why it exists in the first place. Riot vans and police lines are not solutions. They are damage control. They are an acknowledgement that we expect violence, not a sign that we are preventing it. What happened to my colleague's friend wasn't an unpredictable tragedy. It was the extreme end of a very familiar pattern, a pattern that society has tolerated for far too long. And that's what makes it so hard to accept, because as angry and devastating as it is, it feels inevitable. Not in the sense that it should happen, but in the sense that no one seems willing to truly change the culture that allows it to. This won't be the last time someone dies over football. That fact alone is horrifying. And every time I hear about another incident, another fight, another stabbing, another death linked to a match, I think about my colleague, about the quiet way he came back to work, about the weight he carries, about how his life was altered forever because a group of men decided that a football rivalry was worth more than a human life. It's hard not to feel cynical, hard not to feel disgusted, hard not to feel exhausted by the repetition of it all. At the end of the day, football is a game, a bag of air being kicked around a pitch. It can be exciting, entertaining, meaningful to people in positive ways, but when it becomes an excuse for hatred and violence, when it costs lives, something is deeply wrong. And until that is truly acknowledged, until the culture surrounding it is confronted rather than accepted, stories like this will keep happening, quietly destroying lives, leaving grief and anger behind while the rest of the world moves on to the next match. I used to sleepwalk when I was a child. It wasn't something occasional or harmless, like wandering into the living room and falling asleep on the couch. It was the kind of sleepwalking that could have gotten me seriously hurt, or worse. We lived in a rough neighborhood, not the kind of place where a child should ever be outside alone at night, especially not half awake and unaware of where they were. Some nights I would wake up outside, not just on the porch or in the yard, but actually outside, standing somewhere in the dark with no memory of how I had gotten there. I'd come to with that awful sinking feeling in my stomach, the kind where your heart starts racing before your brain fully catches up. I'd look around, recognize bits of the street, and realize I wasn't home. Then I'd have to walk back by myself, step by step, trying not to panic, heading toward my house like it was a lighthouse in the dark. The worst part was always the doorway. More than once, I'd realize the front door was wide open, just standing there in the darkness, like an invitation. Anyone could have walked in. Anyone could have been waiting. I was a kid, small, vulnerable, and completely unprotected. Every time I crossed that threshold, I felt like I was walking into something unseen, like the house itself was holding its breath. Somehow, nothing ever happened during those nights. No one followed me. No one grabbed me. No one was inside the house when I came back. Looking back as an adult, that feels less like normal luck and more like something I narrowly escaped over and over again without realizing how close I came. But none of those nights, compared to the one that still stands out, burned into my memory more vividly than anything else from my childhood. I was about 9 years old. That night, I didn't wake up outside. I woke up inside my bedroom. At first, I didn't realize anything was wrong. I was standing up, which should have been my first clue. But my brain was still foggy, caught somewhere between sleep and waking. The room felt strange, different from how it usually did at night. Then I noticed the curtains. They were pulled back. That alone was unsettling. I never slept with the curtains open. Ever. I was afraid of the dark, afraid of what might be outside, afraid of the idea of being watched. My parents knew that and always made sure they were closed before I went to bed. Seeing them drawn open sent a jolt of confusion through me. I was standing right up close to the window, staring out. As I became more awake, my vision sharpened, and that's when I saw him. There was a man outside my window, not just standing there, but close, way too close. His face was almost level with mine, separated only by the glass. He was very large, bigger than anyone I knew. And the thing that struck me instantly was that he was completely hairless. No hair on his head, no eyebrows, nothing. His skin looked smooth and pale in the dim light, almost unnatural. He was staring directly at me. At first, my brain tried to make sense of it in the wrong way. There's a moment when you wake up where reality hasn't fully locked into place yet. Part of me wondered if I was still dreaming, if my mind was playing tricks on me. But that illusion shattered quickly, because he was moving, slowly. He leaned closer, inching toward the glass, his face coming nearer to mine. His expression wasn't angry or aggressive in the way you might expect. He looked bewildered, confused, like he wasn't sure what he was seeing, almost like he was trying to figure out whether I was real. That's when everything snapped into focus. I realized exactly what was happening. I realized I was awake. I realized I was standing at my bedroom window in the middle of the night, and I realized there was a grown man right outside my room. The fear hit me all at once. I started screaming. Not a controlled scream, not a single shout, but uncontrollable screaming. The kind that comes from somewhere deep in your body, where you aren't choosing to make noise, you just are noise. My legs locked up. I couldn't move. I was completely frozen in place. Pressed close to the window, my body betraying me in every possible way. I peed myself. I didn't even register it at first. My body was in full panic mode, doing whatever it was going to do without consulting me. Tears were streaming down my face. I couldn't stop screaming. I couldn't stop shaking. The man did not expect that. The look on his face changed instantly. That bewilderment turned into pure shock. His eyes went wide. He screamed too, this high-pitched, startled scream that didn't match his size at all. It was almost comical, except that at the time it was absolutely terrifying. He jumped back like he'd been burned. Then he did the strangest thing I've ever seen someone do in real life. He sort of tumbled, like a clumsy roll or a duck and roll move, as if he thought someone was shooting at him. Then he took off running down the street. But he didn't run normally. He zigzagged. He bobbed and weaved as he ran, ducking and swerving like he was trying to avoid imaginary bullets. Arms flailing, body jerking side to side, completely panicked. It was chaotic and surreal, like something out of a cartoon or a bad action movie. All the while, I was still screaming. The noise finally woke my mom. She burst into the room, turned on the light, and grabbed me. To her, it probably looked like I had just woken up from the worst nightmare of my life. I was hysterical, soaked, shaking, unable to form a coherent sentence. I tried to tell her what I had seen. I tried to explain that there was a man outside my window. But my words came out tangled and frantic. She thought I was still half asleep. She thought I'd had a night terror. She comforted me, cleaned me up, and stayed with me until I calmed down enough to sleep again. In the light, with the window just glass and darkness beyond it, it did start to feel unreal. Even I began to doubt myself. Had I dreamed it? Had my sleepwalking and my fear merged into something my mind invented? The next morning answered that question. On the front porch, there was a screwdriver. It didn't belong to us. The door jamb had damage. The door handle showed signs of tampering. Someone had tried to break in. Someone had been there. Suddenly, my screaming made sense. The open curtains made sense. The man's expression made sense. He hadn't been expecting a child to suddenly wake up and start screaming at him. He had been expecting a sleeping house, a quiet opportunity. Instead, he got me. Even now, thinking about how close that was makes my stomach drop. If I hadn't woken up when I did, if I hadn't screamed, if my body had frozen silently instead of loudly, things could have ended very differently. At the time, my mom still brushed it off as mostly a nightmare mixed with coincidence. But as I got older, the truth of it settled in. I wasn't imagining things. I had come face to face with someone who intended harm, and my panic saved me. Years later, the fear transformed into something else. I still get a rush of adrenaline when I tell that story. I still feel that jolt in my chest. But now, more often than not, I end up laughing. Not because it wasn't terrifying, but because of how absurd it all became in hindsight. I will never forget the look on his face when I came fully to life and started screaming. I will never forget his high-pitched scream in response. And I will absolutely never forget his ridiculous ducking, rolling, dodging, and bobbing all the way down the street like he thought my screams were gunfire. It's one of those moments where terror and comedy collide in a way you don't appreciate until years later. As a kid, it was pure horror. As an adult, it's horror with a punchline. But underneath the laughter is the knowledge of how close I came to something much worse. How a sleepwalking habit, a bad neighborhood, and one man with a screwdriver nearly intersected in the worst possible way. I laugh now, but that laugh sits on top of a very real truth. That night could have gone another way, and I was only 9 years old. Back in 2009, when I was still in high school, something happened that I still think about whenever I hear stories about fake cops or people pretending to be authority figures. At the time, I didn't fully understand how dangerous it could have been. I just knew that it scared us badly enough that we never laughed about it afterward. Even now, when I replay it in my head, it still gives me that same tight feeling in my chest. It was supposed to be a fun trip. My friend's parents had taken us down to Ocean Shores for her birthday. It was meant to be a simple getaway, a change of scenery. We were all teenagers, excited to be away from home, staying in a hotel near the ocean. There were 4 of us kids on the trip, me, Jess, Cam, and Heaven. We were loud, silly, and feeling invincible in that way teenagers often do when adults are nearby, but not right on top of you. The day itself had been normal and fun. We hung out, talked, laughed, and did all the usual things. As the evening started to settle in, the sky changing colors, we decided we wanted to go down to the beach. Nothing wild. Just walk around, mess with the sand, watch the sun go down. Ocean Shores felt safe. It was a tourist town. Families everywhere, hotels lining the area. At that age, we didn't think much beyond that. We went down to the beach as the sun was setting. The light was that soft orange and pink glow you get right before it turns dark. The air was cool, the kind that makes you pull your hoodie a little tighter. The beach wasn't crowded anymore, but it wasn't completely empty either. There were still a few people scattered around, walking dogs or heading back toward the hotels. We were down there for maybe 30 minutes, just playing around, running near the water, laughing, talking about nothing important. It felt calm, normal. Exactly the kind of memory you expect to fade away without meaning much later. Then a big white truck pulled up next to us. At first, none of us really reacted. Cars drove on the beach sometimes. It wasn't completely unheard of. But this truck stopped close enough that it immediately made us aware of it. Too close. The engine stayed running. The windows were dark. The headlights were on, but angled in a way that made it hard to see inside. A man's voice came from the truck. He said he was police. The moment he said that, the mood shifted. We all went quiet. That teenage instinct to suddenly behave when you think an adult with authority is watching kicked in. He told us we needed to show our licenses, that he needed to see our IDs. His tone wasn't friendly, but it wasn't aggressive either. It was flat, controlled. We all looked at each other. None of us were thinking clearly yet. At that age, if someone says they're police, you assume they are. You don't immediately question it. You're taught not to. You're taught that police are there to help, and if they ask you for something, you comply. I was the only one who had my license on me. To this day, I don't even remember why I had it. I usually didn't carry it. But that night, for some reason, I did. When I realized that, I felt this strange mix of responsibility and fear. Like suddenly, everything depended on me. The man kept talking. He started asking us personal questions, where we were staying, who we were with, how old we were, why we were out there. The questions didn't feel like normal police questions. But at the time, I didn't know what normal was supposed to be. I just knew my stomach felt tight. He kept shining a light, but not the way a real officer would. The light stayed mostly on his face, not on us, not on the ground, not moving around, just enough that we could see a vague outline of him, but not clearly. The rest of the truck stayed dark. We couldn't see inside. We couldn't see if anyone else was there. Then he told us to come closer to the truck. That's when something inside me hesitated. I remember taking a step forward, thinking I should just go show my license and get it over with. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Cooperate. Don't cause trouble. I started moving toward the truck, holding my ID in my hand. And that's when Heaven grabbed me. She stopped me and said, quietly but firmly, "Don't go. This isn't right." That sentence changed everything. The moment she said it out loud, it was like something clicked for all of us at the same time. The questions replayed in my head. The way he was standing. The way the light stayed on his face. The fact that he was asking us to come closer instead of coming to us. The fact that there was no visible uniform, no badge, no marked vehicle. Fear rushed in all at once. We all started backing up slowly. None of us turned our backs yet, but we created distance. Someone said no. Someone else told him to go away. Our voices were shaking. We were trying to sound confident, but we weren't. Then everything flipped. Suddenly, the lights inside the cab turned on. The image burned into my memory. It wasn't a police officer. It was a large man and a large woman sitting in the truck. They were not in uniform. They were not official. They looked nothing like law enforcement. And the worst part was their faces. They were laughing. Not awkward laughing, not nervous laughing. They were laughing hysterically, loud, uncontrolled, like they found the whole situation hilarious. Like scaring a group of teenage girls on a beach was the funniest thing they had done all day. That laughter was worse than if they had yelled. It told us this was intentional. They wanted to scare us. They wanted to see our reaction. They wanted control. Every ounce of fear turned into adrenaline. We didn't wait. We didn't argue. We didn't ask questions. We ran. We booked it as fast as we could toward the hotel. Sand flying everywhere, hearts pounding, lungs burning. I remember glancing back once and seeing the truck start to move. For a split second, it felt like they were going to follow us. That alone almost made me trip. I had never felt that kind of panic before. The kind where your body takes over completely and your brain just screams move. We didn't stop until we reached the hotel. We burst inside, out of breath, shaking. Some of us started crying almost immediately. Others went quiet like the shock hadn't worn off yet. We told my friend's parents what happened, stumbling over words, trying to explain it all at once. The reality started to sink in after we were safe. Those people weren't joking in a harmless way. They pretended to be police. They tried to get us closer to their vehicle. They tried to isolate us. They tried to get at least one of us alone. If heaven hadn't stopped me, I would have walked right up to that truck. I would have been close enough for them to grab me if they wanted to. That thought still makes me feel sick. We spent the rest of the night shaken. No more beach walks, no more joking around. We stayed in the room, doors locked, curtains closed. We talked about it over and over, replaying every detail, every word, every movement, trying to make sense of it, trying to understand what their intention really was. Were they just cruel people who liked scaring kids? Were they predators testing how far they could go? Were they hoping we would trust them and follow instructions? We never got answers. What I do know is that experience changed how I saw the world. Up until then, I had believed that danger looked obvious, that bad people looked bad, that authority figures could be trusted at face value, that if something felt wrong, it probably wasn't that serious. That night shattered all of that. It taught me that some of the most dangerous situations don't come with alarms or clear warnings. They come disguised as normal, as authority, as something you're taught to respect and obey. It also taught me the importance of listening to that inner voice. Heaven didn't have proof. She didn't have logic laid out step by step. She just knew something was wrong, and she said it out loud. That one moment of hesitation, that one sentence, might have saved me from something much worse. Even now, years later, I think about how easily it could have gone differently. If we had been a little more trusting. If we had been a little more obedient. If I hadn't had a friend brave enough to speak up. We were lucky. I don't laugh when I think about it anymore. At the time, we joked afterward in that nervous way people do when they don't want to admit how scared they were. We even said, well, guess we won't do that again, like it was some silly teenage lesson. But it wasn't silly. It was a warning. It was a glimpse into how quickly a normal moment can turn dangerous. How easily people can misuse authority. How important it is to trust your instincts, even when you're young and unsure. Whenever I hear about fake cops or people impersonating officials, my mind goes straight back to that beach, the white truck, the flashlight on his face, the laughter when the lights came on. And I think about how close I came to stepping forward when I shouldn't have. We were just kids on a birthday trip, watching the sun go down. And for a few minutes, the world showed us a side of itself we weren't ready for yet. It's something I'll never forget. Sorry to interrupt for just a moment. If you're new here, consider subscribing to Midnight Whispers for daily true horror stories that stay with you long after they're told, quietly unsettling and meant for the late hours. You can also turn on notifications so you're always here when a new story arrives and the night begins to stir again. Now, let's continue. A couple of years ago, during one of those long stretches when summer feels endless and uncertain, I was desperate for a job. I had just finished school, and like a lot of people my age, I had almost no real experience. Every listing I looked at asked for things I didn't have yet. Experience, references, a background that proved I already knew what I was doing. After days of scrolling through job boards, sending out applications, and hearing nothing back, I started applying to anything that sounded even remotely possible. That's when I saw an ad looking for people willing to campaign. The wording was vague. It talked about flexible hours, good pay, and making a difference, but it didn't really explain what the work actually involved. I remember staring at the listing longer than the others, feeling unsure. I didn't really want to do it. Something about it felt off, or at least unclear, but at that point I was tired of being picky. I told myself I could always say no later. So I applied. To my surprise, I got a call back the same day. At first, I felt relieved. Someone actually wanted to talk to me. The person on the phone sounded upbeat and professional, thanking me for my interest and telling me they'd like to meet in person. They gave me an address downtown and said it would be more of an informational meeting than a formal interview. That alone struck me as a little strange, but again, I brushed it off. Maybe that was just how they did things. What really stuck with me happened a few hours before I was supposed to be there. I was at home getting ready, trying to decide what to wear, when my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. When I answered, it was someone from the same place, asking if I was still planning on showing up. The tone wasn't rude, but it was urgent, almost anxious. I checked the time while they were talking. My meeting wasn't for another 2 or 3 hours. I remember laughing awkwardly and saying yes. Of course, I was still coming. After I hung up, I stood there for a moment with my phone in my hand, feeling confused. Why were they checking in so early? It wasn't like I was late or had missed anything. It made me uneasy, but I told myself they were probably just trying to confirm attendance. Maybe people bailed on them a lot. Maybe they were just overly organized. Still, the feeling lingered. When it was finally time to leave, I headed downtown. The address they gave me was in a part of the city I knew well. Busy streets, tall buildings, lots of offices and shops. Nothing about the area itself seemed dangerous or strange. If anything, that made me feel a little more at ease. I figured if something sketchy was going on, it wouldn't be happening in the middle of downtown. The building was tall, but when I walked inside, I was immediately thrown off by how small the lobby was. It was cramped and quiet. Not what I expected at all. There was a security desk tucked into a corner, and that was pretty much it. No big signs, no directory listing a bunch of companies, just a few elevators and a dull, almost forgotten atmosphere. I stood there for a second, looking around, trying to get my bearings. I didn't see the company name anywhere. No logo, no office plaque, nothing. Feeling awkward, I walked up to the security guard and asked if she could help me find the place I was looking for. I told her the name of the company. She frowned slightly, like she was trying to remember something that wasn't there. She admitted she wasn't familiar with it, but suggested it might be upstairs. She pointed me toward the elevators and told me which floor to try. That should have been my second warning. I thanked her and got into the elevator. As the doors closed, I felt a strange tightness in my chest. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was just nervous. Job interviews can be stressful. especially when you don't know what to expect. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped out and immediately froze. It didn't look like an office floor at all. Instead of a reception area or cubicles or even a hallway with business names on the doors, I was standing in what looked exactly like a residential apartment floor. The hallway was long and narrow, with dim yellowish lighting that made everything feel dull and heavy. Doors lined both sides, one after another, all looking exactly the same. No signs, no numbers that stood out. Just door after door after door. The air felt stale, like the place wasn't used very often. I checked my phone to make sure I was on the right floor. According to the directions, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I started walking slowly down the hallway, my footsteps sounding louder than they should have. With every step, my unease grew. I kept expecting to see something that would reassure me. A sign taped to a door. A poster. Anything that would confirm I was in the right place. But there was nothing. When I got closer to the door number they had given me, a wave of dread hit me out of nowhere. It wasn't a logical thought. It wasn't based on anything specific I could point to. It was just this overwhelming, instinctive feeling that something was very wrong. The door looked exactly like all the others. Plain, closed, silent. It could have belonged to anyone. This was supposed to be a workplace. My heart started pounding. My palms were sweating. I remember standing there staring at the door and suddenly realizing how isolated I was. No voices, no movement, no sign that anyone else was around. If I knocked and something happened, no one would hear me. That was the moment my instincts took over. I didn't knock. I turned around and practically ran back down the hallway, my heart racing faster with every step. I didn't look back. I just focused on getting to the elevator as quickly as possible. When I finally reached it, I frantically pressed the button, feeling exposed and vulnerable the entire time I was waiting. When the doors finally opened, I stepped inside and hit the lobby button immediately. The ride down felt longer than it should have. I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to figure out what exactly had scared me so badly. Nothing had technically happened. No one had spoken to me. No one had threatened me. And yet, I felt like I had just narrowly avoided something terrible. When I got back to the lobby, I went straight to the security desk again. I asked the guard, once more, if she knew anything about the company I was supposed to be meeting. This time, her answer was firmer. She said no. She had never heard of them. That only made things worse. I thanked her and left the building as quickly as I could. As soon as I stepped outside into the noise and movement of downtown, I felt a little safer. But the uneasiness didn't disappear. Even as I walked away, I kept glancing over my shoulder, half expecting someone to follow me. For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The more I replayed the experience in my mind, the more wrong it felt. The early phone call, the vague job description, the tiny lobby, the security guard not recognizing the company, the office that looked like an apartment hallway. None of it added up. I started to wonder why I hadn't questioned it sooner. That night, I tried looking up the company online. I searched the name they had given me, the address, anything I could think of. There was almost nothing. No proper website, no reviews, no social media presence that looked legitimate. Just a few vague mentions that didn't really explain what they did. I realized then how close I might have come to something dangerous. I don't know what would have happened if I had knocked on that door. I don't know who would have answered, or if anyone would have answered at all. Maybe it was some kind of scam. Maybe it was something worse. My imagination filled in the blanks in ways that still make my skin crawl. What scares me the most is how easily it could have gone differently. If I had ignored that bad feeling, if I had convinced myself I was just being paranoid, if I had knocked on that door because I didn't want to seem unprofessional or rude. I think about how many people, especially young people looking for work, are taught to push past discomfort and just go for it. How many times are we told that nerves are normal and that opportunities don't come without risk? That day, my instincts told me something was wrong, and for once, I listened. Even now, years later, I still think about it sometimes. The memory comes back unexpectedly, usually when I'm walking past an apartment building or waiting for an elevator. I get that same tight feeling in my chest, that same sense of dread. And I remember how close I came to opening a door I was never meant to open. I'm glad I didn't go in. Whatever was behind that door, I don't need to know. The fear I felt was enough to tell me that leaving was the right choice. And as unsettling as it is to not have answers, I'm grateful that the story ended the way it did, with nothing more than a bad feeling and a lesson I'll never forget. There was a family friend we knew growing up who, even as kids, we understood was having a hard time. We didn't have the words for it back then. But looking back, it's obvious her life was unraveling. She made strange choices, especially with the people she dated. Her boyfriends came and went, none of them feeling stable or normal. Her kids were wild in a way that felt more chaotic than playful. They would shoot airsoft guns at each other and practice martial arts right there in the front yard like it was completely normal. It was odd, but not alarming, at least not to us. Adults around us would shake their heads or make quiet comments, but no one ever said she was dangerous. She was just different, unstable. Someone who had fallen on hard times and didn't really know how to climb back out. As kids, we accepted that. Grown-ups are weird sometimes. Families are different. You don't question it much beyond that. Then one day she moved out. It wasn't gradual. There was no long goodbye or explanation. She just left. She told people she'd be back soon and asked if someone could help take care of her pets in the meantime. She left behind her cats and her dog. Said it would only be for a little while. She sounded rushed, but again, adults are busy, right? My sister and I were 9 and 10 years old. We knew the house. We'd been there plenty of times. We were comfortable with it. So the responsibility of feeding the animals fell to us. Our parents agreed. It didn't seem like a big deal. We were responsible kids. It was a short walk up the street. We'd go together. For about a week, that's exactly what we did. Every day, we'd walk up the road, let ourselves into the house, and spend maybe 20 minutes there. We fed the cats, gave water to the dog, played with them a bit so they weren't lonely. We talked to them like kids do, telling them their owner would be back soon. Then we'd lock up and walk home. Nothing strange happened inside the house. That's the part that still feels unreal. The house felt normal, quiet. Empty, sure, but not threatening. No signs of someone else being there. No noises, no mess. Nothing that would have made two kids think something was wrong. If anything, it felt sad. Like a place waiting for someone who wasn't coming back yet. Then one day, on our usual walk up the street, everything changed. We didn't even make it to the house. The road was blocked. Police vehicles were everywhere. Not just one or two, but a cluster of them. Lights flashing. Officers talking into radios. And then there were people with big guns. Not the kind of thing you see during a normal day in a quiet neighborhood. We froze. As kids, we didn't understand what we were seeing, but we knew it was serious. You don't see that many police unless something really bad is happening. We were confused, scared, and suddenly very aware of how small we were. We didn't go any farther. Adults quickly stepped in and told us to go back home. There was no yelling, no panic directed at us, just firm voices and hands guiding us away. I remember looking back over my shoulder, trying to understand why our normal routine had suddenly been cut off like that. Later, we found out the truth. The woman hadn't left voluntarily. A man she knew, someone from her past, had moved into the house and forced her out. She left because she was scared. She didn't tell anyone what was really happening. Maybe because she was ashamed. Maybe because she didn't know who to trust. Or maybe because she was just trying to survive. That man was on the FBI's most wanted list. He was wanted for crimes involving minors. My parents never told us the details. They didn't need to. Even now, I don't want to know exactly what he had done. Just knowing the category was enough to make my stomach turn. Especially years later when I was old enough to understand what that meant. He had been living in that house the entire time. The entire week we had been going there. Every day, 2 small kids walked up the street, unlocked the door, and spent time inside a house where one of the most dangerous kinds of people imaginable was hiding. We were alone, vulnerable, completely unaware. The realization didn't hit us right away. At the time, all we knew was that something bad had been stopped. The adults around us were shaken in a way we hadn't seen before. My parents hugged us. Relatives hugged us. Neighbors hugged us. There were a lot of long, tight hugs and quiet voices. I remember feeling confused more than scared. Why is everyone acting like this? Why are they hugging us so much? Why do they look like they're trying not to cry? We didn't fully grasp the implications back then. We just knew we weren't going back to that house. As I got older, the weight of it settled in slowly. I started to understand how close we had been to something truly horrific. How luck, timing, and ignorance had been the only things protecting us. That man could have been there while we were inside. He could have watched us come and go. He could have chosen to do something, and there would have been no one to stop him. The fact that nothing happened doesn't make it less frightening. If anything, it makes it worse, because it means we were safe by chance, not by protection. I think about that woman, too, about what it must have taken for her to leave her home, her pets, her entire life behind, because someone dangerous had taken over her space, about how desperate she must have been, about how alone she probably felt. And I think about my parents, how they must have felt when they found out. The guilt, the fear, the sudden understanding of how badly things could have gone. No parent ever wants to realize they unknowingly put their kids in danger, even when there was no way to know. That's why the hugs were so tight. They weren't just relief. They were terror finally releasing its grip. Even now, when I think back on it, I feel a strange mix of emotions. Gratitude that nothing happened. Anger that someone like that was able to hide in plain sight. Sadness for the woman who lost her home. And a lingering unease at how normal everything seemed until it wasn't. As kids, we didn't walk away from that house feeling scared. We walked away not really understanding anything at all. It took years to realize how close we came to being part of a very different story. One that wouldn't have ended with hugs and relief. That experience taught me something I carry with me even now. Danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides behind normal routines, friendly familiarity, quiet houses on quiet streets. Sometimes it lives right where you least expect it, while life goes on as usual around it. And sometimes you only understand how close you were once you're far enough away to finally see it clearly. Sorry to pause for just a moment. If this is your first time here, welcome. I hope you're enjoying the calm so far. If you'd like more nights like this, true stories, gentle rain, no interruptions, please subscribe to Lacuna Noir. It really helps me keep creating these peaceful experiences for you. And tap the bell so you're here every time a new story arrives in the dark. Now, back to the story. I grew up living near a house that has always felt different, even before I knew its history. It's the kind of place that looks normal from the outside, maybe even comforting in a familiar way. But once you know what happened there, it's impossible to see it the same again. The house is over 50 years old now, and today my sister lives there. Long before that, it belonged to my grandparents. It was a central part of our family for a long time, full of memories that should have been warm and safe. But there's another side to it, a darker one. When my grandparents lived there, about 20 to 30 years ago, my grandpa told me something that stuck with me in a way I didn't fully understand at the time. He told me that 3 people had died in that house. Not peacefully, not naturally, violently, tragically, and close together in a way that made it feel like the house itself had absorbed something terrible. The first death was a baby. No one is entirely sure whether the baby was a boy or a girl, but everyone agrees on what happened. The baby drowned in the bathtub. Even now, just thinking about that makes my chest feel tight. A bathtub is supposed to be one of the safest, most ordinary places in a home. Clean water, warmth, care. To imagine something so small and helpless dying there is horrifying in a quiet, suffocating way. After that, the mother couldn't live with it. She ended her life by hanging herself downstairs. I don't know exactly how much time passed between the baby's death and hers. Days, weeks, maybe months. But the way it's always been told, it feels connected, like one tragedy pulled the other into existence. Like grief became something that filled the house and wouldn't leave. People don't like to talk about that part in detail, and I understand why. It's too painful, too personal, too heavy. Then there was the third death. Someone was murdered in front of the back door with a hammer. That detail is the one that unsettles me the most. The back door. Not a bedroom, not a hidden corner. A doorway. A place meant for leaving or entering, for coming home, for stepping into the world. The idea that someone died violently right there, at a threshold, feels symbolic in a way I can't fully explain. Like whatever happened didn't stay contained. Like it crossed the line. When my grandpa first told me this, I was young. Too young to fully grasp what it meant. I remember listening with wide eyes, feeling a mix of fear and disbelief. Adults sometimes tell stories that sound exaggerated, especially to kids. I didn't know whether to believe him completely or file it away as one of those strange family tales that grow over time. But the thing is, I didn't just hear it from him. Over the years, I heard the exact same story from at least 6 other people. Not all at once, not in a dramatic retelling, just bits and pieces shared casually, sometimes when the house came up in conversation. Different people, different times, same details. The drowned baby, the mother who hanged herself downstairs, the murder by the back door with a hammer. They didn't know I'd already heard it. That's what makes it hard to dismiss. When multiple people tell the same story independently, with no reason to lie and no benefit to exaggerate, it stops feeling like rumor. It starts feeling like something real that the community quietly carries, even if no one wants to dwell on it too long. As I got older, the house started to feel heavier to me. Not in a dramatic, haunted house way, more subtle than that. Like the air inside always felt a little thick, like sounds carried strangely, like silence lingered longer than it should. Even when nothing happened, it felt like the house was always aware of you being there. Then there's the photo. A few years ago, my auntie took a picture inside the house. She didn't take it to capture anything paranormal. It was just a normal photo, the kind people take without thinking much about it. Later, when she looked at it, she noticed something that made her stop cold. There was a red face floating on the ceiling. Not a shadow. Not a trick of light that disappears when you squint. A face. Red. Clear enough that you could see the shape, the expression, the presence of it. It didn't look like smoke or reflection. It looked like something that didn't belong there, but was there anyway. When she showed it to people, reactions were immediate and intense. Some people went quiet. Some people got chills. Some tried to explain it away, but their explanations never sounded convincing, not even to themselves. You can usually tell when someone is reaching for logic because they're uncomfortable, not because they truly believe it. I saw the photo myself. That's the part I can't escape. I didn't just hear about it. I didn't just hear someone describe it. I saw it with my own eyes. And once you've seen something like that, once you've stared at it long enough to know what you're looking at, it's impossible to unsee it. It wasn't vague. It wasn't ambiguous. It was a red face on the ceiling where no face should be. Seeing that photo shifted something in me. It made all the stories, all the deaths, all the quiet unease snap into a sharper focus. Suddenly, the idea that the house might carry something with it didn't feel silly or superstitious. It felt plausible. I started thinking about what a house absorbs over decades. People live there. They love. They argue. They grieve. They suffer. They die. Especially in a place where death wasn't peaceful, where it came with panic, despair, and violence. Those emotions don't just vanish. Even if you don't believe in ghosts, it's hard to deny that trauma leaves marks. Maybe not always visible ones, but felt ones. A baby drowning is terror and confusion. A mother hanging herself is grief so heavy it becomes unbearable. A murder with a hammer is rage, fear, and brutality. Those aren't small emotions. Those are extremes. And all of them happen within the same walls. The fact that my sister lives there now adds another layer to it. It's still part of our family. It's still used, still lived in, still filled with everyday routines. Cooking, sleeping, watching TV, laughing. Life continues as it always does, but the past doesn't disappear just because new people move in. Sometimes I wonder if the house is quiet because it's empty, or because it's full. I wonder about the red face, who it could be. The baby, the mother, someone else entirely. Or maybe it's not about identity at all, but about presence. About something unresolved that doesn't know how to leave. I also think about how strange it is that so many people know the story. Stories like that don't spread unless there's truth behind them. People might embellish details over time, but the core stays the same. And in this case, the core never changed. 3 deaths. Specific ways. Specific locations in the house. That consistency is unsettling. I don't talk about it casually with everyone. Some people don't want to hear things like that. Some people get uncomfortable. Others get defensive. insisting there must be a rational explanation for everything. And maybe there is. Maybe someday someone will explain the photo in a way that truly makes sense. Maybe the stories will be documented somewhere officially. But even if that happens, it won't erase the feeling. Because the feeling doesn't come from one source. It comes from the combination of everything. The age of the house, the family history, the repeated stories, the photo, the way the house feels when you're inside it, especially when it's quiet. Some places carry weight. You don't notice it right away. You don't always feel scared. Sometimes it's just a sense of being watched, or a sense that you're not fully alone, even when you know you are. Sometimes it's nothing more than a chill that doesn't match the temperature, or a sudden urge to leave a room without knowing why. That house has always felt like that to me. Knowing that my grandparents lived there, raised part of their lives there, and carried that knowledge with them makes me think they felt it too. My grandpa didn't tell the story with excitement. He told it plainly, like a fact. Like something you accept even if you don't understand it. And the fact that he wasn't the only one who knew makes it harder to ignore. I don't know what people expect when they hear stories like this. Proof, maybe. A clear explanation, a neat ending. But real life rarely works that way. Sometimes all you get is a collection of moments, memories, and experiences that don't fully align with logic but still feel real. The house is still there. My sister still lives there. Life still goes on. But every time I pass by it or think about it, I'm reminded that places remember things. Even when people move on. Even when years pass. Even when walls are repainted and floors are replaced. Some stories don't fade. They settle in. And once you know them, once you've seen what you've seen, you carry them with you, whether you want to or not.